everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And I'm Adam.
And today it is Movie Club number 2.
Indeed.
New segment that we started at the beginning of the year, and just a really quick refresher if this is the first time you're joining us for one of these. Basically, new segment. Every Friday, we're going to release a review of our weekly Speak, Film, and Enter Movie Club selection. And the criteria for these movies is basically just that they're not brand new. Can be anything that's basically a year old to 100 years old, essentially. Just anything we feel like would be interesting to watch and talk about. Probably focus on things that we haven't seen before. Old cult classics, kind of hidden gems, maybe a foreign movie here or there, or possibly revisiting something from our youth to see if it is actually good. That would be kind of the one time I think where it might be interesting, where we've all seen a movie from like the 90s or the 80s or something that we grew up with and want to go back and see, like, did we only love this because we were like 10 years old?
Yeah. We'll get to one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So for today, for week 2 of the Speak, Film, and Enter Movie Club, we watched the 1971 classic from Robert Altman, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And Adam, would you like to tell the people what it's about?
Indeed. McCabe and Mrs. Miller. A gambler and a prostitute become business partners in a remote Old West mining town, and their enterprise thrives until a large corporation arrives on the scene.
Yes. The menacing big business
large corporation
was just killing dreams way back in the 1800s.
Continues to this day. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Not a commentary.
I meant to put this up while you were reading it, Adam. It's a nice little image we got here.
Apologies.
Not your fault. I'm the one who forgot to do it. So either way.
Yeah, and that's Warren Beatty and Julie Christie as the leads, as McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
Yes, the two big stars of this movie. And I guess going into this, had either of you heard of this before?
I'd heard of it, and I'd kind of seen it on Criterion, just like, it has kind of a very distinct image, him in the big coat, and I've always been like, oh, I wonder, I heard that's really good. I wonder about checking that out, but never got around to it until now.
Yeah, same. So I had actually watched this once a few months ago for the first time. I'd never really heard of it until sometime in 2022. And then kind of like you, I'd sort of passed over it a couple times. And then I think it was one of those like leaving Criterion or leaving HBO Max or something at the end of this month. So I finally watched it and I liked it, didn't love it the first time I watched it. But then, when we came up with this idea for kind of the movie club, and Criterion put together this collection of snowy Westerns.
Yeah, that was smart.
And I had kind of been feeling like, I want to revisit this movie. I feel like it's better than I thought the first time I watched it. So I thought it would be fun to have you guys watch it and for me to revisit it. And it's very seasonal as well. Like, especially you get towards the end of the movie and it's just everything's covered in snow. Basically about halfway through, but particularly that like the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's like a blizzard.
Yeah, exactly. So felt very seasonal, very timely. And I guess, what'd you think? First impressions, was this something that you guys enjoyed?
Yeah, so I actually I was lucky enough to have a little time before we recorded tonight, and I actually was able to rewatch it. So I watched it for the first time about a week ago, and then I was like, oh, I got a little bit of time to kill. So I rewatched it, and it just moments before coming on and recording with you guys.
Nice. So fresh in your head for sure.
Yeah, very fresh in my head. And I gotta say, the second time around, I also liked it more. I felt like I understood kind of the themes. I think the biggest thing with this is it's not your typical Western at all, especially for an older Western. Like, it's kind of akin to like Power of the Dog that came out last year, where like it's a Western, but it's not about gunslingers and shootouts and robberies and it's just about like people trying to survive, trying to survive out west. And this in particular is about two people who are honestly like mostly just it catches you by surprise because you see Warren Beatty and you meet his character, and there's a lot of rumors about him. He has a big rep, as the bartender notes, or as Sheehan, the other bar owner, notes. He's got a big rep. He's got a big rep, and so you already are expecting like, oh, okay, typical Western hero. Like, I bet he can shoot. I bet he can gamble. I bet he's good with the ladies. Like, he's got a big rep. So that first time you watch it, you're expecting that, and then you come to realize that this is not at all what it is.
Yeah, it's not at all about that. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
No, Adam gave a little big rep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think this is a movie where once you know kind of the end and where it's going and what kind of story it's actually trying to tell, because it does kind of, I don't think it like totally upends the Western exactly, but it does play with your expectations.
Yeah.
And it kind of, at certain points, sort of veers away from, especially at that point, just like what Westerns were. It gives you a different feel in a different place too. Like, it's raining a lot. It's in Washington State. It's not in the Southwest. There's no desert. It's like rain and mud and muck and ice and snow.
In a really small town. Like
in a really small
town. They're building the town as they live in it. Like,
we should talk about that too, because I think that's brilliantly done. But also, just really quick, Dylan, another recent movie that I think this reminded me a lot of is Kelly Reichardt's First Cow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a little bit.
Where you get that Pacific Northwest setting, and it's a lot more about like kind of the little guy battling against established businesses and people with money and struggling when they come up against that. Like, like if you look at like a John Wayne or like a Clint Eastwood movie, like they don't give a shit about making money. That's not what they're out there for.
No.
And they're superheroes basically.
Yeah.
And that's also where this kind of plays with the myth of the American Western more than anything else, I think. And that's why I really, really like it, is because I'm not somebody who finds that mythologized version of the American West to be that interesting. And so to get something like this that for a lot of the movie still follows a lot of the same beats.
Yeah,
like you said, Dylan, like new guy coming to town with a rep, and for the first like 30 minutes or so, like nothing tells us that it's not all true.
Yeah.
He kind of fits in the same way you'd expect kind of the new guy in town to sort of start having his way and having success. And then when Mrs. Miller enters is when we get kind of the first change, played by Julie Christie. And she's very different than really any other female character I've ever seen in a Western that's this old.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think once she is introduced, that's when the movie really starts getting good and interesting. And the first time I watched it, I thought that, and then the second time I watched it, I also thought that once she showed up, it picks up a little bit, just because kind of with the themes and like what is about to happen. She just comes in red hot. She just like totally sees through like McCabe and like what he's trying to throw out there. She just sees right through it, and like immediately like that, the effect that has on him. And it's just fascinating. I really enjoyed the rewatch. Like,
yeah,
they're dynamic.
She definitely forces him to kind of like think about the future more. She's like, I got plans. I don't want to fucking be here forever. Like I'm doing stuff. Like I want to make money, get my business going, and then I want to leave. And he's just like, well, if I can make it here, then like I'm set. Like she challenges him in that way to like look beyond like what's directly in front of you.
She also leads the audience to sort of question McCabe's intelligence or abilities for the first time.
Yeah, and she challenges his business know-how that he tries to espouse.
What I find is
falls into sort of
fascinating is we can get into this more during the spoiler section, but kind of the relationship that the people who are already there have to McCabe once he arrives is very similar to the relationship that McCabe has to the people from the mining company once he's there and they arrive. And it's a similar thing where it's like somebody with more money coming into town.
Yeah.
And we just get a different perspective on it, really, because we get both sides of it from McCabe for sort of the first half versus the second half of the movie. And I think it's handled really, really well. And yeah, they just slowly chip away at that kind of upstanding, perfect, like American West hero that Altman was clearly playing with for a movie that came out in 1971. Kind of, I mean, this was what, 3 years after The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
Yeah, I
2
think
years
so.
after, right in that range.
Yeah, I can't. I think Good, the Bad, the Ugly is 69.
Yeah, it was 68 or 69 in my head. And then also just sort of like the tail end of all the John Wayne stuff.
Yep.
And it's effective. I think the movie's still effective if you're not really familiar with those tropes that he's playing with. But I think if you are familiar with them, then it's going to play with you and give you a lot more to chew on than it would otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen any sort of Western, which has, again, been parodied a million times, you're familiar with, like, classic gunslinger being able to roll into town, do whatever. So watching this, you already kind of understand. You have built-in understanding of, like, what you should expect, and then, like, why this kind of subverts that or changes that, and why those changes were made. And, like, because it's more about this character versus just, like, mythologizing anybody could have been this person. This is a specific character study on McCabe.
Indeed. And Good, the Bad, the Ugly was 66.
Yeah, 66.
Oh, 66?
Yeah, even.
Wow.
Okay. Than I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So 5 years still, though. The other two things I wanted to touch on quickly before we kind of give our stars and then get into the spoiler half of the discussion were just the set and the setting kind of combined, and then also the music of Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, that was a fun surprise, and immediately from the opening credits, it just adds like so much to the uniqueness.
Yeah, it gives this like steeped in the past, like fairy tale vibe, along with the way that it's shot, where it's all like very soft lighting, and there's kind of this sort of like misty quality to it, and then Leonard Cohen's music just adds to that. And this is just such, I think, a great movie to like middle of the winter. It's snowing outside, like lights off, you're under a blanket, and you can just like chill out to this. Like the pacing of it is comfortable as well, I think. Especially like the first time I watched it, the pacing was kind of what bothered me a little bit because it's different and I didn't know where it was going. But I watched this actually 2 times this week before this episode.
Okay.
So especially the second time I watched it, I was just like the pacing is so this movie feels like it's 40 minutes long.
It goes by really quick, or it packs a lot in to the 2 hours. Like I also, on the second time I watched, I'm like, oh man, like we're coming down the home stretch, and then I was like, and I looked, I'm like, oh, actually no, there's like 45 minutes left. I was like, but it feels like quick, like.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think those things pair together really well and give this movie kind of a cozy feel, which then is upended later by some newcomers. But
it's funny that you say this is like a cozy movie, because it's about like a gambler who runs a whorehouse, like and the madam of the whorehouse like doing business, which is very clearly like an unsavory act, and then it's like this nice soft quiet like mountain town, like mining town. Like it's kind of a funny juxtaposition,
which I think was intentional for him to kind of have it look that way, where we have this romanticized view of the Old West, and it's painted that way. The audio, like the music, is all kind of that way. And then what they're actually doing on screen is not what people talk about when they talk about the Old West.
That's a good point. What we see on screen is just people struggling, just trying to eke out a living in the harsh West on this mountain. Like, gamblers, and mostly, sinners of various degrees. And there's definitely, the second time I watched it, I picked up on a lot of religious themes. There's definitely a strong, God and sinners and evil, and it's no coincidence that when he walks into town the first time, they're building the church, and that's like the first thing that he looks at. So we'll touch on that stuff more in the spoiler section of it. But
that shot too is incredible.
Yeah, great shot. And then I just wanted to touch on the way it looks. I did watch one of the Criterion little extras, and it was with the cinematographer, and they were talking about how they basically, I can't remember exactly what they did, but in effect they added light, like backlighting to like all the frames, so that just kind of fades everything out like a little bit in white, and that makes it look like an older faded picture kind of.
Yeah, like, I watched that too.
Okay, yeah, you watched that too. So it's like, yeah, so that was all by design. I really appreciated that the second time, because the first time you're watching, you're like, God, this looks so different, and like, what is it about, like, you know, like you said, it almost looks like timeless. Like, when did they film this? You know, but yeah, that was on purpose. And then that mixed with the Leonard Cohen music, which also has kind of a timeless feel to it, is just a great pairing.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else, or you guys want to dive into the stars?
Let's dive into the stars.
Jump into the stars.
All right, we'll be right back with our star ratings. Okay, who would like to go first?
You go first, Nate.
I think I should go first. I think it can only go up from me.
Okay. Adam, take it away.
You're gonna have more to talk about. I gave this 4 stars. This is my first viewing. I haven't watched it a second time. I didn't really know what to expect. I did find it to be a little bit slow because I had to pause it a couple of times. I looked at it and was like, oh, this is 2 hours. And then I paused what I thought was like, all right, I'm probably like an hour and a half in. And I was like an hour in. And I was like, okay, like, let's move a little bit. Like, I understand where we're at. Let's keep going. But obviously when you have to sit with those characters and truly understand like what they're trying to do with subverting McCabe being not who he says he is. Or who is mythologized to be, because he comes in with that rep, and he doesn't really say anything else about it. I really liked it. I'd love a second viewing. It's just not exactly what I thought it was going to be. I likened it, like you said, to Power of the Dog a little bit. I also, McCabe kind of reminded me of like a Rango character, because I just watched that, which is like another Western.
That's it. Okay, yeah, I can see that. He's got some Rango to him.
He's got some very Rango to him. He's not as like wily, but he's like, you know, he's the same type of character.
He's got some funny lines too.
I really need to rewatch Rango.
Dude, Rango's great. Rango's great. But yeah, 4 stars for me. I enjoyed it. I definitely got done with it, and talked to my girlfriend about it, and was like, you know, it was a 70s Western. It was a little strange, but like I ended up kind of getting along with, like, it worked towards the end. And I really appreciated kind of letting things fit together, letting it fall as it was supposed to. And the shots were probably my most favorite part, the cinematography of like the intro scene, especially him walking in on a horse with just these like scenic vistas of like the mountains and the forest that he's walking through and all that kind of stuff. They spend time showing you that at multiple different points, and I think that helps really get you kind of in the mood of the movie. So 4 stars for me.
Awesome. We never played with this view before. I'm gonna play with it right now.
Well, okay. Let's swap. Who's going next?
Next. Put me in the big screen. Put me in, coach.
How do I do it?
Just click and drag.
I don't know. You sounded pretty confident before.
Adam, did we do it at the same time?
We might have. I'll do it. Here we go.
Yeah, you do it.
There we go.
Hey.
There it is.
I clicked on that.
For those listening to the podcast, sorry, that was totally
the technical difficulties.
Great visual humor.
Exclude you, but
yeah,
work in progress here.
Yeah.
So over to me. I also initially gave this 4 stars, but after rewatching it today, I'm bumping it up to 4.5. Very strong 4.5. I get what it's trying to do, and it does that very, very well. The writing is great, and the performances by Beatty and Christie, I kind of appreciated even more, knowing now like who their characters truly are. I think that's just really, really well done. And also the Leonard Cohen music, those melodies, they get stuck in my head. Like I keep humming them like to myself, or even just like anything that we're doing. It's like, it's time now to record the podcast. Like even like it's just ever present. So great choice there. Yeah, I'm gonna give this a 4.5. I think this is a fantastic movie.
So this is funny because now we've got Adam's watched this once. Dylan watched this twice. I've watched this 3 times now, so I'll go last. And I am going to give this 5 stars.
Boom.
And Adam, I was kind of right where you were after the first time I watched it. My first viewing,
that's what it sounded like.
I gave it a 3.5. And then that second viewing on, what was it, probably Monday night, just absolutely blew me away. Like knowing where it's going. I think the last 15 minutes of this movie, this is one of the best endings I've ever seen. Just combining everything with like the setting and the way that it looks, and kind of the final showdown is done in a way that's different than other Westerns, while not like branching out so far to where it's something unfamiliar.
It's still gripping. It's still
absolutely.
You
And
still get what you want.
Yep. And the music the second time, I was like really feeling it. It's like this, this works really well. The character kind of just setting up the whole like dreamer and realist interplay with where I know the story's going. I think this movie is an absolute masterpiece. I think the first like new 5-star I've given in a really long time. I
was just gonna say, it's been a while.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. I watched it 2 times in 3 days. I'd watch it again tomorrow. It's great.
No, I think if we get another big snowfall here and we're kind of snowed in for like a weekend or something, I think this might get a rewatch. Might have to convince someone to watch it with me.
Yeah, definitely. So really quick, before we get into the spoiler part of the episode, I did want to announce next week's movie club pick, which is Ikiru, a film by Akira Kurosawa from, I want to say 1952 or 54. Right. I think it's 52.
52.
Yeah, which I believe is available on Criterion and HBO Max. If I'm not mistaken.
I will look it up and let you guys know.
Yeah, which is just kind of a story about a bureaucrat who gets some news that he is dying, and he decides he doesn't want to be just another useless government employee for the rest of his life, and he wants to get something done with the limited time that he has left. So
it's also it's also an inspiration for a new movie that's coming out next
year. So we're on the same page there. I was a British remake starring Bill Nighy called Living, which debuted at Sundance almost a year ago in 2022, and will be coming out sometime within the next month. Should be the next few weeks, but it's hard to tell exactly. But that's part of why we picked Ikiru, is because Living is coming out soon, and so we thought it'd be a good chance to potentially review both.
Yeah. Ikiru is streaming on HBO Max and the Criterion channel, as well as some other ones. Canopy is another one. Just Watch has this listed as coming out in 56. IMDb has this listed as coming out in 52.
Probably a difference between like Japanese and like an English subtitled version. Yeah.
So you were both right to a certain extent.
Everybody's right.
Everybody wins.
Yeah.
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is from 69. All right.
That's what I'm here for. That's my original purpose. Is look
right. Well, I didn't see it until 2021 or 2020. So is that when it came out for me?
It's hard to see movies when you're not alive when they debut. So
that's very true. I don't think truer words have ever been spoken on this podcast.
All right.
Only facts here at Speak Film and Enter.
Yeah. So with that, I think we can dive into the spoiler discussion. So if you haven't seen this would be when you'd kind of want to hop off and maybe come back and check out this should be about 15 minutes, I would think.
Go see it for sure. Like go watch it.
Yeah. If our 4, 4.5, and 5-star scores were like, that should convince you, go watch this movie. I guess, I mean, the ending is so perfect looking. And like, I love the subtlety, which I didn't pick up the first time, of just watching the town get built over the course of the movie. And they never really draw your attention to it. I watched a lot of the extras on Criterion. And one of them I watched, like, the guys building the stuff in the movie were the guys actually hired to build the sets.
That's really
Altman just dressed them in like era appropriate clothing. And was like, we're filming this scene, but like, just keep building that, because there would be people building it.
Yeah. That's so funny.
That was cool. So brilliant.
But nice. There's a lot of real life stuff seeping into the movie then, because another fun tidbit is that the two stars, Warren Beatty and Julie Christie, were actually having a love affair at the time of this movie as well. So you've got that bit of meta realism going on there.
That is just kind of fascinating, given the dynamic of their characters, and like first scene that they have, which is so good, where she eats like a bunch of eggs and is just like, "Listen to me, buddy."
Yep. Just totally dressing him down.
I'm a whore and I know whoring.
Yeah. Let me run it.
Yeah. Okay. Job's yours.
I also didn't notice the first time that when he goes to grab the first three women from that one guy in the smaller town, Mrs. Miller is in that guy's room.
Yeah.
Oh, is she really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't notice that the first time. Second time I did. So she was there when he bought the first three, and then she coincidentally, is on this wagon and finds her way up the mountain, to him. So that could be interpreted a couple different ways.
She's going to look for him specifically.
Yeah, she does say she came from Bear Paw.
Yeah, Bear Paw. She said, "Are you McCabe? I came here to talk to you."
Okay,
I'm looking to make more money.
Yeah,
exactly. A lot more money.
And I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And I love, this is where I love kind of how they just like sort of, for lack of a better word, like undress McCabe as we go along, which actually fits really well with his kind of relationship with Mrs. Miller.
Yep.
Where he's talking such a big game, and like you mentioned, he lets his reputation speak for him, and he's leaning on these people. He's got more money than they do, and he can come in and just kind of do things the way that he wants, just like later it gets done to him. But that's why it's so fascinating to see, like, he, like, the guy says he only has 2, and he goes, "Oh, bullshit, I want 3."
Yeah.
And it's like the exact same negotiating tactic, except the other guy just caves and doesn't die. It's an interesting dynamic, and that's what makes her character. She kind of reminded me a lot of I feel like she would have fit in really well in like some type of Dickensian story, like Oliver, or something. She just she kind of reminded me of Fagin a little bit, where she just kind of knows how to get stuff up and running.
She's just a no-nonsense woman.
Yeah,
really street smart.
Yeah, he's gliding off of what I assumed is the presumed reputation that he has, because somebody's like, "Oh, are you pudgy?" And he's like, "Call me McCabe."
He's definitely not pudgy.
He's definitely not pudgy. I don't think he is, because
it's hard to tell. That's why I love this, though. It's so
he never says that he
so
is
ambiguous.
Yeah, he doesn't act like it. And then like when he meets the killers that come in,
the real killer,
they're like, "That guy's never killed a man in his life." Like that.
I love that line. That is such a like the first time I watched it, I was like, "Oh, that's a great line." But the second time I watched it, where I actually like understood everything, I was like, "Oh man, like that is like full circle for him." He comes in with all this bluster, and he's just surviving on charisma and hot air, and like you said, having a little more money than the rest of them. But then, that guy just sees right fucking through him. Like a real killer looks at him and is like, that guy ain't killed nobody.
It's one of those things that like he never overtly says like, "No, it's not me," or "Yes, it is me." He just lets people believe it because someone said it. And he's like, "Sure, that sounds good." Like it'll help.
And then later, when they're like, "What, you calling his friend a liar or whatever?" Because he said he killed Bill Roundtree or whatever. He kind of just gives a generic like, "Oh, he was cheating at cards and off, and he died."
Yeah. Like,
I don't know. He died.
He's not with us anymore. Like
it did. When you said that was a great line, that did remind me. I meant to open this episode by asking you guys if you have poetry in you.
Oh yes, and that is a fantastic monologue.
That scene is so freaking good when he's just by himself and like really build himself up.
Is he also drunk during that? That's when he's like,
I don't think he is at that point.
One of the times.
I think that's different than when he gets drunk.
Yeah, I think it's the point where he realizes like, okay, like this is happening. Like these 3 men are here to kill me. I can't weasel my way out. This woman, like who I'm falling for, wants me to run away forever. Like
it's almost like he's trying to speak in like the actual mythologized heroes of other Westerns, like into himself.
Yes.
It's like it's almost Altman saying just like, "I am Clint Eastwood. I am Clint Eastwood. I am Clint Eastwood."
Yeah. Talking himself.
He's trying to build himself up because he knows it's coming his way and he probably can't handle it. Which I just love that scene so much. And I think we've kind of danced around this, but like he's an interesting character. Like, how full of shit do you think he is? Do you think he's smart at all? Or is he just kind of like to what degree do you think he's capable? And at what point is he kind of just coasting on Mrs. Miller and his money? Like, it's just a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah.
I I think he's not as smart as he thinks he is, but he has he knows what should be done, or like he knows where the opportunity is, and he's taking advantage of that. But he can't actually like run a lot of stuff. I mean, we've seen him get drunk.
He can't do math.
He can't do math. Like he's not good at like the day to day or even like the actual like work of it. But he knows where the money is because he clearly like rides into town and like buys the bar around and like gets everybody on his good side and like, oh, I'm gonna open this up and I'm gonna help you guys out. But then like as far as like, running it, as far as like running things, he doesn't have any real like ability to do that. So I think a lot of it is him coasting on having a bunch of money and just like letting other people handle it for him and then believe that he's some larger than life or bigger person than he actually is.
Yeah, he seems very good at it, like identifying opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then everything after that is kind of, he definitely lets it get to his head. Like there's an Icarus element to his character for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a grift.
It seems like he's the things that make him good at gambling are all that he leans on, are like his skills that he leans on for everything. Just like a little bit of bullshit, reading the other guy, kind of just playing it by the, how it goes, and, with a little bit of luck, maybe. Like, that's how he just handles every interaction. And it's fascinating how at the beginning he totally just like mesmerizes the whole town, right? He's just a star all of a sudden, and people are talking about him, and now he's running a business, and now he's bringing women in, and now he's the businessman. Now he's the best guy, the number one citizen in the whole town. Like, he just bamboozles all of them with his, like charisma and stuff. And then at the end, when that's not enough, and he meets the two hard-nosed businessmen who've seen it all before, and they're like, okay, dude. And then the three killers who come in to kill him, and they're like, yeah, okay, dude.
I also love how
start running.
The one guy is like, yeah, let's just talk to him one more time. And you can kind of tell that like McCabe is going to make his deal at breakfast. That's his plan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ends up getting a hit put out on him because the other dude is just like, I don't want to do that.
I'm going home. Fuck that. Like,
like, I'm too old. I've done this too many times. I just don't care. And like, that's the end of McCabe.
Yeah.
Like it's that quick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he's kind of, he's reached a level that he can't play at that level.
Yeah.
Basically.
You're only allowed to make so much money as a small businessman, and then somebody else is going to come in and buy you out. And if they don't buy you out, they're going to put you out of business in a different way. And that's still true. Like,
it's really fascinating to watch Mrs. Miller watch him during that whole part of the movie, because she knows right away what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is also like why she just goes straight for the opium. She's like, oh, this is fucked.
Yeah.
Yep.
And she can't handle it because she is a realist and she understands how the world works, and she's got to escape reality a little bit, where McCabe just envisions himself as a frog with wings, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not bumping his ass ever, except he is.
Yeah,
he's constantly bumping
himself up.
Like,
Which also, can we talk about just how amazing like frontier humor is?
Oh my god, the sayings people have. Like
exactly. You got a turd in your pocket?
Like what?
Like what is that? How does that
I don't know what
relate?
it means, but he said turd, so he's probably
exactly.
He's probably
how does that mean what you're like the way you're using it?
Yeah, and all the terms for all the, Chippy, and I'm running a gooseberry farm, and
how do you square a circle? Shove a 4x4 up a mule's ass? Like, that's not even really a joke, but everybody laughs.
That killed back in 1885,
His frog eagle joke, which is super funny because it's the first time where like nobody laughs at his joke. I mean, the guy does it like politely because he's there to make a deal, but you can tell that they're both just like, this guy is an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the delivery of the frog one. If a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his ass so much. You follow me?
Yeah.
Like,
and everybody's like,
you get it? Yeah, I follow you. Yeah, you're cool, and I want to be like you, and I want.
And nobody can actually follow it.
Yeah,
because it's nonsense.
It's absolute nonsense.
But
I was going to say something I picked up on is that towards the end, a couple things towards the end that made more sense to me the second time watching it. One is the scene with that lawyer.
Yes, I love that.
When he goes to see if the lawyer can help him out of this predicament, and the lawyer just gives him a whole long diatribe of lawyer future politician bullshit. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's another level of shystiness above what he is capable, you know. So he just totally gets like mesmerized the same way that people were mesmerized by him. And then the next scene, he's parroting those lines to Mrs. Miller about how I'm fighting the big business. I'm a small businessman. Like he's totally bought in. And just like, and it's just so fascinating. Like that scene definitely clicked more the second time.
It works so well because it's like, this is the West. The law has no, like, the law is not going to help you out here. And also just because he is such an optimist and a dreamer, he's so ready to have somebody tell him it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's one of the scenes that also tells me that he's not very smart, because he buys it hook, line, and sinker, and then absolutely just parodies the exact same words out. Just like somebody else in the bar says that, like, when he's like, you heard what he said, get back to work, and he says the exact same thing. It's like, you're just that guy. Like, you just want to be seen like you know what you're doing. You don't actually know what you're doing.
Remember the guy who repeats his line about, I'm basically paying you fools 15 cents so you don't have to go home alone with married five fingers. And then the other guy's like, yeah, boys, let's go. He's just trying to help us out so we don't have to hang out with five-fingered Mary. And they're like, shut up.
Like, shut up, bro. Like, it's that's what I'm talking about. It's that scene. It's the exact same thing.
And that's what you don't really pick up all of that the first time you watch it, I think, where there are these layers to it where he just presents McCabe as, like, McCabe is to the locals of this place what the mining company is to McCabe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that like middle management style, and which really shows you that there's not necessarily anything like special about him.
No.
Other than that, like, it's just people with money following,
slightly more fortunate.
Well, yeah, and just like letting other people who have less money than they do, like, kind of do the groundwork. In McCabe's case, like, literally, and honestly, in the mining case, kind of literally as well.
Yeah.
In a way. But it's like, yeah, they like these other people who have less already established this place, and then somebody with money can show up and take advantage of that and make more money. And then McCabe builds this up to the size where it's advantageous for the mining company to come in. Yeah. And he's stepping on their toes a little bit now, and then they can come in and just take what he built.
Yeah. You can you're only allowed to make so much money as a small business owner before somebody steps on your toes and says, like, no, that's also mine.
Yeah.
Get fucked. Like,
the power dynamics and kind of the different, like, class, like, there's definitely some strong social commentary in here about those who have and those who have not. And then I think this is a good time to transition to what I wanted to touch on too, which is the religious themes.
I was going to ask you.
And how those, like, you know, we already mentioned, like, he comes to town, they're building the church. And then at the end, you know, everyone knows, the whole town knows that these three guys are here to kill McCabe, right? So it's like his actions, his sinful ways have come full circle, and now he's facing his judgment for it, right? And they all get out of town because they don't want to be around when the shooting starts, right? So the town is like empty. It's like a ghost town, right?
Well, they're locking themselves in their homes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of them are like, it shows a couple of them down by in like the Chinatown or whatever. Like the one dude's just sitting there. He's like, I'm not going to work today. Like, I'm just going to hang out down here. Right. So, okay. So everyone's gone. And then you've got this amazing cat and mouse, like, sequence, which is great in the snow, whatever. But where does he end up? He ends up going to the church so he can go and get a better view of everybody. And then the preacher or whatever, like, takes his gun and is like, you need to leave. Like, you know, like, kind of like, you brought this on us. Like, you got to go out there. And he's like, but there's killers out there. Like, I need my gun. He's just like, get out. And then what ends up happening? The main killer shoots the priest, just blows him away. And then the church starts on fire. And because all the townsfolk are gone, there's only that one dude who sees it and has to, like, run through and being like, the church is on fire, the church is on fire, while this shootout is going on. And then that forces everybody to come back into town. And then it's just chaos. And there's people running around. There's a fire. They're still trying to kill McCabe. And it's just like all this, like, religious, like it's just so perfect that it's like the church is on fire and the town, like, wasn't there to save it and is, like, now trying to scramble to save it. It's all because of, like, McCabe and the shystiness of, like, the West in general. Like,
yeah, a little bit. I took a slightly different view of kind of setting the church on fire and people like it, like the way that they're just willing to completely, like, nobody helps McCabe.
Yeah.
None of them do.
No.
They all know what, like you said, they all know what those three guys are there for, especially after the one young guy like shoots the cowboy.
Yeah, that was sad. Rest in peace. He didn't deserve that.
Big Dick Dom.
Yeah. And like the inside of the church itself is like not even finished.
Mm-hmm.
Like clearly nobody ever goes there.
Yeah.
And then they see that like the church is on fire. They see this opportunity to kind of, I think, putting the fire out at the church lets them feel better about just like letting McCabe die. Basically, it gives them comfort to think like, hey, we're a community. We stand for things. Yeah. Look, we just put the fire out at the church that none of us ever go to.
Yeah.
And let this dude die when we could have easily prevented that, like as a community.
Yeah.
I think it's Altman's like not so subtle way of just being like, yeah, religion's not going to help you here either.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also like part of that to support your theory is when we see that cowboy die, the preacher watches, or not when the cowboy dies, it's when Coyle hits his head or gets like knocked out and bashes his head open. He sees it, puts his head down and walks away. And like there's no interaction with the person who got hurt, the people who did it, none of that. He's just like, not my problem, and just keeps walking away. And it's like, yeah, religion isn't going to actually help you, but it's nice to hold on to, but nobody gives a shit.
Yeah, like, and clearly McCabe's place is more popular than the church ever is in that town.
The whorehouse is the most popular place in town.
Yeah.
And I actually, in one of the things that I watched on Criterion, they talked about how like intentionally they made everything so dirty because they wanted to make the inside of the whorehouse really clean and just have that be the only place in town with like life and color to it. Where everything else, I still think this is one of the best sets I've ever seen for a movie.
It's really cool.
That low-hanging bridge is so cool.
Yep.
And then once the town's finally done, and even through the whole movie, when you're seeing them build it, and you don't really get that full shot of it until the end of the movie in the snow when McCabe's running for his life. And you see like all this time that's passed, and you're finally like, oh, it's like it's done.
Yeah,
and then,
the scale
exit McCabe.
The scale of everything felt so perfect. Like this movie felt, like you said, like the town as the set for this whole story. It just evolved at just the perfect pace where it just felt so natural. And like you said, then at the end you see the whole town, and it's like the size that you would expect for like an up and coming mining town. And it just feels, everything it just feels right. It also made me really want to play Red Dead Redemption again. Because there's towns in there that are like that exact size. Like, oh yeah, Main Street, couple other buildings, a church. It's pretty much all you need, and then you're on your way.
It became a ghost town late after the mine dried up, or whatever you want to call it. Like, yeah, I think it being this tiny little spot is so interesting. I mean, this is a classic example of world building without realizing it. Right? Like we're so used to being like, oh, well, you have to do this set piece so you can do this later, so you can do this. And this is like, it just happens as the story progresses. You don't have to take a beat to specifically point it out, but it does get pointed out in a, like, while other things are happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, really that last thing I just wanted to touch on is how perfect I think the ending is, with kind of the zoom in on Mrs. Miller just getting super high because she knows McCabe is dead, and then his death is so perfect too, with him just like curled up in the snow, and he just gets buried.
Yeah,
well, the whole ending is so perfect, where he shoots all of them in the back, but then the last guy he plays possum and then shoots him in the
little
face.
bit,
because he did get shot, but
he's absolutely dying. Yeah.
But yeah, like just that, like such a classic, like, oh yeah, like, you know, here's this big gun battle at the end of this Western. And we got the town and the different shooters. And it's like, okay, you kind of think you know what to expect, but it's like, no, he's going to shoot him. He's going to shoot two of these guys straight up in the back. Like, and then he's going to pretend to be dead when he's really just hurt. And then he's just going to eventually, the snow and the blizzard is just going to overtake him, and he's just going to not be able to do it anymore. And then definitely Mrs. Miller's last two scenes worked a lot better for me the second time. I just felt like they have that moment, they have that night where he kind of tries to be like, I really want to be with you. And she kind of starts crying, and she's like, no, you don't need to say that. Like, just come here. But like now you see, it's like, so she knows at that point, like, oh, I need to get out of here. Like, this is just everything about this is just like tragic, and I just like can't. So then right after, she sneaks out and walks away down the road, and then we don't see her at all during the whole thing, and then at the end she's back in the opium den, and it's like, yeah, that's so perfect and fitting, and totally.
What else were you gonna do?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the first time I was like, well, why wouldn't she want to stay and at least, protect, maybe she can still get some of the money from whoever the new owners are. Maybe she can people in the town still know her. But but now the second time I was like, oh no, that with her character and just the type of person she is, it just makes so much more sense that she'd be like, all right, well, on to the next one. But great.
That's how she got there in the first place.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's all I had.
That's everything I had.
Other than one last look at his amazing coat. Possibly the greatest coat in the history of cinema.
That's definitely possible. I was going to ask also, did you recognize any of the other faces in the cast?
Yeah, Shelley Duvall is in here.
Shelley Duvall as Ida.
Yeah, that's right.
From The Shining. Yeah.
That was that was cool. And then the guy who played
the
who's the other bartender?
Sheehan. Oh, yeah.
Sheehan?
Yeah. I don't know that guy's name, but I definitely recognize that guy's face.
Rene Auberjonois.
He's like he's been a lot of things as an older man.
Yeah, he was in The Patriot with Mel Gibson. He was the Reverend, and then I never saw this, but he played Father John Mulcahy in the MASH movie. I'm a big MASH fan, but I haven't seen the movie. So he's the preacher in that.
He's in First Cow.
Yeah, he's got a small part in First Cow. The guy with the bird. Yeah.
Also, he's in The Princess Diaries.
That's what we know him from. That's got to be it.
Now we're
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. No, then beyond that, I do not have anything else to offer other than, highly recommend. And even if you have seen it once and you haven't rewatched it in a while, go check it out again. I've really, really enjoyed the rewatch. Warren Beatty they're both just so good.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, I think it is Adam's turn to put a wrap on the show.
It is Dylan's turn.
Dylan has it. That's right. Excuse me.
You boys got to make up your mind if you want to get your cookies. Because if you want to get your cookies, I got girls up here that'll do more tricks than a goddamn monkey on 100 yards of grapevine.